So after the RFQ is created and sent to the suppliers to bid, the suppliers would send in their bids. The buying team, it is their responsibility to collect all the bids, do an honest price comparison. Generally, the comparison is done not on merely the basis of the quoted price, but we do create a detailed price comparison and on landed cost basis at least, so that the bids can be accurately compared. So for example, one supplier may give us a credit of 30 days to pay, versus another supplier may give us a credit of 60 days to pay. Well, in that case, we have to credit some additional funds or additional cost to the supplier too, who's actually giving us more credit and indirectly greater benefits. Or in some other cases, a supplier may pack goods in, let's say, 25 kilo packages, and my process uses 25 kilo packages. So it becomes very easy for me to get those packages and just dump every 25 kilo package directly into my reactor or whatever process I'm using. Another supplier may supply goods to me in a 40 kilo packages. Well, in that case, I have to actually adds one more step where I have to take 25 kilos, measure it, and then store that 15 kilos somewhere else. And in such processes, there is always some wastage. So as a buyer, it's not a straightforward and easy step to convert bids received, compare, and create a PO. And multiple steps. It's a very detailed process that the purchasing process professionals should involve themselves in. But whichever ways, a purchase order, when once generated, is actually a legal offer to purchase. And so once the purchase order is communicated to the supplier and the supplier accepts the offer, it becomes binding on the buying company to execute the contract. So we have to be careful about issuing purchase orders. And besides that, purchase order is also very detailed. It has the reference to the supplier quote, because whenever supplier submits a quote or a bid, the supplier would have said, well, this is the bid received as per your RFQ, blah blah blah, and this bid is valid for the next 30 days. So ideally, the purchase order must be issued within that period and giving reference to that bid, saying that, hey, look, you guys gave us a bid and this purchase order is created as per that bid. So it becomes part of the legal contract and the supplier acceptance. But it has detailed requirements, some boilerplate clauses on who the responsibility, where the responsibility transfers take place, um, payment terms and conditions, the applicable state laws that are applicable, etc. Um, so it can be a very detailed document. And again, there are very different types of purchase orders. The standard PO is when I want to buy some one sporadic need item. I issue that PO for that sporadic need and get it. In some cases, businesses issue what is known as planned or blanket POs. In a planned PO, the one PO is associated with multiple deliveries, and at this point, we don't exactly know when those deliveries are going to be required. But we do have a very good idea of the exact quantities that are going to be required. So I can say that, hey, I require 12 tons of this product in the next quarter, and I will take those 12 tons in four separate deliveries. But at this point, I don't know when in the next quarter I will take those four deliveries. In blanket PO, we don't even know the exact quantity. So we might specify some rough quantity and have some plus minus tolerances specified in the contract. So the purchase order, remember, can always be amended, and the quantities changed and things done. Again, there are nuances of conditions under which this is recommended and not recommended, but that's the typical PO. A consignment PO is again for consuming materials which are placed already at the buyer's facility by the supplier, and it has to be transferred. There has to be an ownership transfer. It is in the buyer's stores under supplier's ownership. So it has to be transferred from the supplier's ownership to the buyer's ownership, and that's why we have the consignment PO there. And of course, there could be the subcontract and service POs, but we are not getting into service environment in these series of videos. And POs, there has been a process done for requisitions, and approval and budgets have been specified in requisitions. But again, in a PO, a second level of check is managed, and businesses tend to have some kind of a telescopic approval process. So, if in cases when, for example, PO quantity is under $2,000, well, the purchase executive can directly issue the PO. If it is between $2,000 to $7,500, it requires a signature of a certain assistant manager. If it is more than that, it requires approvals from a certain higher authority, and so on. So the idea again here is to ensure that the right amount of purchases are made, and some frauds are prevented. But again, here we have to be very careful that the PO does mention the RFQ under which it was created, or has the mention of the purchase requisition, so it becomes traceable and adequate analysis can be conducted on material consumption and price when at the end of the financial or whatever period we are talking about. So with these specifications, it becomes very easy to track expenses, manage the budgets, and ensure that the business is operating and buying things at relevant costs. It also helps to create accurate invoices, because remember, whenever we pay, we will talk about it later in this video, we have to have something which is called as a three-way match, where the purchase order, the goods received note, and the invoice, the three, PO, GRN, goods received note, and invoice, have to be compared to pay. And it is very necessary that all these three have the same terminologies. And that is why when we create the PO, these terminologies, the standard terminologies, have to be introduced so that it becomes easy when a three-way match or some analysis has to be conducted. And since a PO becomes a valid contract, it offers legal protection to both sides. And so, as a business, I am very clear that, well, the supplier is supposed to do these terms, and if the supplier does not, I have some legal protections. And even for the supplier, there is guarantees that, well, the supplier can go ahead and produce, get the necessary resources, because she will eventually be paid for the expenses. Um, that's what essentially we need to know about a PO. Again, as usual, there we can extend this discussion, but as far as the purchase to pay process is concerned, this is all we need to know. In the next video, we will take the process of PO generation ahead.